Hey, welcome everybody to our Wednesday, May 28th regular board meeting. Please join me for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call roll.
Director Thomas,
I'm here.
Director Ratterman,
Here.
Director Robertson,
Here.
and Director Davidson.
Here. The next item is public comment. At this time, the members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. Public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there any public comment today? Is there anybody online? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed for later discussion. 3A, approval of the minutes for the board meeting of April 23rd and April 30th. 3B, review of the director's monthly timesheets. 3C, ratify claim summary 638. 3D, report on monthly investment transactions for April 2025. 3E, approval of the auditing services contract for fiscal year 25 through 27. 3F, authorized designated representative for the SWRCB West Point Wilseyville Water Treatment Facilities Consolidation Project. 3G, adoption of the California State Water Resources Control Board Cross Connection Control Policy Handbook. 3H, approval of resolution of support for nomination of Michael Minkler for Aqua Region 3 board member position. I have a motion.
I'd like to move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, are we actually having a public hearing? Are we? Okay, so we have to open the public hearing? Okay, well, I hereby open the public hearing to discuss the status of vacancies and recruitment retention efforts in accordance with Government Code 3502 .3. Stacy.
Yes, we are being a public hearing today, because this is a new law that was passed. AB 2561 was passed September 22nd. We're gonna get we have a little slideshow up here to give you some information, but basically AB 2561 was created by the legislator for compliance reporting for local public agencies on the vacancy of positions. Today, I'm going to go over kind of what AB 2561 says that we need to do as a public agency. We're going to go over some of the data that is required.
Stacy, is there someone in the room that can, I know Pat's not here, but is there someone tall enough to move that TV?
Hey.
That'll do. Thank you, Kevin.
That's good. That's good.
Good engineering.
So we are going to go. We'll go over the data that we're required to provide during the public hearing, our recruitment and retention efforts. We do have sorry, that should not be a question mark. We do have a presentation by a CIU, Local 1021, that will also be presenting. And then we'll open up for any questions you have. As I had mentioned, AB 2561 was enacted last September, effective date of January 1st of this year. This information must be presented to the board before the adoption of the budget each year. So this will continue to be a agenda item, public hearing in the future years. The goal of the bill was to introduce greater transparency and accountability in public sector staffing. With this bill, the bargaining units also have the right to make a presentation, which SEIU Local 1021 has decided to do this time. The NCU has also offered its decline. So we're just going to move straight into the data. So the district overall, our turnover rate is 1.53% with a vacancy rate of 5.19%. Pretty low. The reason for the vacancies are listed there. One moving out of state, 2 retired, 3 other opportunities, and 5 are probationary. When I look at the district vacancy outlook of what our current staff is, our average years of service is about 7.79 years with an average age of 42.12. Of our 77 budgeted employees, 6 are now eligible for retirement. So we'll talk about retention efforts and recruitment efforts. Then we go through each, these are just each individual bargaining units. SEIU, the vacancy rate, 1.25 or 45 rather, 4.7 and so forth. Of the 6 total employees that we have eligible for retirement, 5 of those are within the SEIU. NCU, turnover rate 1.82, the vacancy rate of 6.49. And again, just 1 eligible employee for retirement next 5 years. Any questions about that data? Recruitment efforts. So the district has been recruiting a lot these last few years, even though our numbers are really low compared to many other agencies. And we are actively attending job fairs and career events. External Relations Manager Kelly Gerkensmeyer has attended quite a few of our local high school career events. And we do have local interest, and we are educating the youth, I guess you could say, on kind of what water or wastewater districts do. A lot of them are not aware of the robust job opportunities within water and wastewater district. We've also incorporated social media and website in our recruitments. This is probably the last couple of years is when we started to increase our presence on social media, the website, and that has greatly enhanced, I believe, our quality and the number of candidates that do apply. For our retention efforts, we have an employee relations and wellness committee. In that committee, it is made up of volunteers from SEIU, Local 1021 bargaining unit, the MCU bargaining unit, and members of the management team. We coordinate things like anniversary milestone recognitions. We talk about those during the all employee meetings as well. We schedule those and events that go along with it, whether it be a fun game or activity, or talk about what's going on in the district so that our employees are informed. We have an annual Kids Day that we do. It's coming up here next month for us. And then we do an internal step challenge with the employees that ends next week. We also have a career ladder. So employees are hired in generally at a 1 or a 2 level, entry level. They have the opportunity to move up in level of classification if they obtain certain certifications, and once they hit a certain number of years working in their current classification. That is something that is not, I haven't seen it very many other districts. But it is an opportunity for our employees to move up. It is often a question that we receive when we are doing interviews. And then, of course, we work so that we have a competitive compensation and benefit package. As you all know, we're currently going through a total comp salary survey, and the results should be coming out here pretty soon. We'll be coming to the board with that information. That is all I have today.
Thank you.
I have one question though. We recently lost our Division 3 member of the board of directors, and it was well documented at her going away party that she used to bring cookies, and everybody appreciated that. Since we've lost that, are we going to lose people as a result of that, or is Jeff going to have to pick up the slack there?
You know how to get cookies?
Yeah, cookies.
What's a cookie?
No. I just wonder if we're in jeopardy of losing employees because of no cookies from Bertha. Anyway, just a little levity hoped for. Hello, Andrea.
How's it going? It's been a long time since I've spoken before this body. It's nice to see many of you again.
Yeah.
My name is Andrea Polavita Pinkham. I am the field representative for SEIU 1021, representing the workers here at CPWD. And I'm here today to give the employees' perspective on the vacancy and turnover rates here at the district. To give better understand what keeps employees here and why they leave. We surveyed our members and reviewed the employment data from recent years. The most common reasons employees stay here is the district's location. It's as simple as that. Many value the opportunity to work in and serve the very community they live in. The second most cited reason is the ability to retire with dignity after years of public service. But it's important to note this, that many of the employees who have more than 15 years of service stay because of the retiree medical benefit they receive, a benefit that new employees do not get. This creates a troubling question. How many current employees will remain for the long haul, knowing that this crucial support system won't be there for them at the end of their careers? A job is more than just a short commute or the hope of a dependable retirement. People need to feel respected, supported, and fairly compensated throughout their working years. Since 2019, 58 employees have left CCWD. Of those, 21 have left for other jobs. 13 have retired. 7 have moved out of the area. 14 have been terminated, whether that's on probation or for other reason. 1 resigned, 1 had their contract expired, and 1 passed away. I'm not sharing these numbers to show that I actually can do math. I'm sharing them because they tell a story about a workplace that struggles not just to attract talent, but to keep it. We have to ask ourselves, could we reduce probationary terminations by offering a more competitive starting pay to attract better quality candidates? Would fewer employees leave if they felt consistently treated with dignity and respect? Do staff members trust that promotional opportunities are based on qualifications and merit and not favoritism? The truth is, even a long commute can feel worth it when you're part of a workplace that values you. None of this should be a surprise. The workers at CCWD want what any dedicated professional wants: to make a difference in their own community, to grow within their career based on their abilities and hard work, to be recognized and compensated fairly, and to retire knowing that they can take care of themselves and their families. When employees no longer see these opportunities, especially when benefits are removed or diminished, they begin looking elsewhere. If we want to reverse the vacancy and turnover trends, we need to build a workplace where people not only come, but they choose to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
May I ask some questions? What, in your survey, was there an overall satisfaction number by the employees?
I asked the employees for the top 3 reasons why they stay employed.
Okay.
And then overwhelming responses, there was 2 main reasons that lifted to the top. Number 1 is local, that's local. And then number 2 was their secure retirement.
Which implies no longer the case for new employees.
No, the health benefit.
Still great retirement benefits.
It's
Just
just
not,
retirement.
health,
Yeah,
just the unfunded health coverage that, we all agreed to change a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but those were but overwhelmingly people want to work in their own community.
and then, did I hear correctly? But I'm sorry, I don't recall the name of the woman who spoke before you. Relative to other organizations, both private and public, the turnover rate is higher than, less than, about the same as?
So public agencies are just starting to report out this information. I'm looking at the private, but from the presentations that I have seen thus far, we are lower than public agencies.
Okay, thank
But
you.
that's, 2 or 3 that I've seen, presentations.
Thank you.
I could ask a follow-up question. Andrea, do you have any data that would show that similar agencies in our region do continue to fund health, retirement health benefits for retiring employees, new ones?
New ones.
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to answer that off the top of my head without doing further research. I'm not somebody to give that kind of answer. So I don't want to answer off the top of my head.
Okay, well,
I know that there's another agency that I represent that does.
as board members, we get squeezed in various ways. And when I first came on the board, it was clear to me that the number, the relationship of the number that we have to pay for active employees compared to the number that we were paying for retired employees was getting out of whack. We would soon be to a point where we were paying more for the retired employees' health benefits than we would be paying for the active employees. I, for one, looked at that as being an unsustainable continuum. We just we had to be responsible to our ratepayers, and clearly, if it would be demonstrated to me that we were not an outlier in that I might have had a different attitude. But the numbers indicated to me we had to make a change, and we did. How many years ago? 4 or 5 years ago? Yeah.
So I'm just giving the reality check that if somebody's weighing whether they should stay or they should go, that's something that may put something, put a point in another column.
How many of your, in your study that you did, how many of them left to get a new job at a place with that healthcare? Okay.
I just simply asked the question of current employees. I asked them, what?
Well, it'd be, certainly something I would be interested in knowing, if that's really what we're losing. Are we losing our people to that? Because, everybody understands, when they sign up, they know what they're getting into, and they still come.
They still have, but culture is something, when you guys talked about your class and comp study, they talk about, the benefits that you can see on paper, right? And then the other thing is culture, right? So yes, they come and they might like what they see on paper, and you also have to take into account the culture too. And those are things that we're working on as well. And I'm not here to debate retiree healthcare. We can absolutely do that when it comes to negotiations. I was asked to give my perspective on the vacancy rates and the turnover rates, and that's something that's gonna affect your turnover rates.
Sure.
That is the reality.
Okay,
And when it comes down to negotiations and we want to crunch numbers, we can absolutely do that, and I'll come better prepared to have that conversation. But it absolutely is gonna affect your turnover rates.
all right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any board have any other questions or what are we being asked to do here today? That was it.
Presentation.
Is there any public comment? Anybody on? Fine. All right. Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Stacy.
So do we have to close that public hearing?
Okay, yeah, now I will close the public hearing. Okay, we'll move on to 5A, presentation of Transparency Certificate of Excellence Award. Kelly.
Afternoon.
That is,
Yeah.
is diploma?
Yeah, that's our Transparency Certificate of Excellence. We get a little sticker that we get to put up in the window as well. To be honest, I feel a little silly presenting this because I really owe this to our wonderful board clerk behind Mega Desk here, Rebecca. I did tell her I would embarrass her, so hopefully I'm doing a good job. I really do appreciate, she put in a lot of work just really organizing all this and putting it together, not only our policies, but all the board's training that you guys need to keep up on. She's always keeping an eye on you guys. So if it wasn't for her, I'm not sure if we would have got this done. I also want to thank the board for approving our website about a year ago, because that website truly did play into facilitating this award. In the back end of the website, there's a whole checklist of all these transparency items. There's an enormous checklist of everything we have to submit to get approved for this. And when we first submitted it, I expected to have a little bit of back and forth saying, okay, you're missing this document or you need this, but we really only were missing two things, and those were just oversights. So pretty much with the first submission, they approved the certificate. So really proud of it. This is based from the Special District Leadership Foundation, the SDLF. It's an independent nonprofit organization formed to promote good governance best practices among California special districts. This program was created to promote transparency in the operations and governance of special districts to the public, and to provide special districts with an opportunity to highlight their efforts in regards to transparency. The three main subject areas were basic transparency requirements, website requirements, and outreach requirements. To receive this award, we had to demonstrate the completion of essential governance transparency requirements, including conducting ethics training for all of our board members, properly conducting open and public meetings, and filing financial transaction and compensation reports to the state controller, amongst many, many other things. We are one out of 142 active certificate recipients in California. We're one of two in Calaveras County, and we're one of four in the, not Tri-County area, but Amador, Tuolumne, Calaveras, and Alpine. There's only four special districts that receive this, that have this award currently. It's a 3-year certificate, and it expires in 2028. So I'm asking you board members to please keep up on your training. So when we go to resubmit in 3 years, it'll be another seamless piece of cake.
Is everybody looking at me?
But one thing I noticed, this isn't something all of a sudden we did differently. I noticed we've been doing this for years. It's just now we compiled it all, submitted it, and got it. So it's something I'm really proud of. And again, thank you to the board for supporting us with this website changeover. And thank you very much, Rebecca. Appreciate your help.
All right.
Well, I want to congratulate both of you and the entire district for working on this and this board. I'm extremely proud to finally have this award. I've been looking at this and talking about it for a few years. And it is good to check all those things off. And I'm hoping that we renew this thing in 3 years. And I know it is board participation as well as, jumping through hoops, but this is, and I did not know that there was that few people in our district, in our county and in the state that have taken the time to go through this, but congratulations and
Thank you. It's not just water districts, special districts, there's sanitary districts, fire.
probably
district.
100 in Calaveras County, 100
Yeah,
special
it's
districts in
several,
Calaveras
so-
County, and there's only, how many of us? 2 or 4?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just 2 in the county.
2 in the county. Awesome.
In the 4 counties.
Yeah, awesome.
Well done. And
Thank you.
Very nice.
Is there any public comment regarding that item? Okay, move on to 5B, discussion direction regarding fiscal year 2025, 26 draft operating budget. Jeff? Always.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board, Jeff Meyer, Director of Admin Services. Scott, this is mainly for your benefit because everybody else is well educated and ready to give it a blessing and say, Jeff, go sit down.
Oh, I did give it a glance over,
Okay,
but I have a few questions.
very good.
Thank you, Jim.
At the end of this meeting, excuse me. Well, let me back up a second. We presented this, the draft operating CIP budgets to the Finance Committee on May 20th. That was Director Thomas and Director Davidson. And Director Robertson was in attendance, sitting in the back, not participating. So those 3 have had the opportunity to listen to the budget presentation. There have been some slight changes since the draft budget. Basically what we did, we reduced service and supply budgets, capital outlay budget, and added the Copper Cove Water Treatment Filter Rehab project to the water CIP budget. We discussed that at last week's meeting. At the end of this presentation, I will ask your board to direct staff to submit the proposed 25, 26 operating CIP budgets to the board for adoption on June 11th. There will be a public hearing at that time, and it's been duly noticed, or it will be. Okay, very good. On today's item, I'm doing things a little bit differently than what I did at the original presentation last week. One of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to add what our goals are in preparing this budget. So I'll go over that. I'm going to address any challenges we faced, or the challenges we face for coming up with a balanced budget. I'll show you the preliminary water, wastewater, and hydropower budgets. Remember now we have 3 funds, not 2. I'm going to discuss the different fund types, talk about the preliminary water and wastewater CIP budgets, and then I'm going to compare these budgets with the rate model. Now, some of the things that when we sat down, we in the district, all the department heads, Michael and myself, looked at this budget. Obviously, the first goal was to prepare a balanced budget for all 3 funds. The next was to eliminate a structural deficit in the water operating fund. If you remember from the rate study, that was one of our challenges that required us to increase rates these first 3 years because we were having a structural deficit there. We also want to restore positive fund balance in the wastewater operating fund and create a plan to meet minimum operating reserves. Excuse me. The sewer fund has been negative for many years. In fact, it had to borrow money from the water fund to keep it going. And we're addressing that within this budget. And we want to improve the water and wastewater 90-day operating reserves. We have several reserves, operating reserves and the 90-day operating reserve. The operating reserves are in the water and sewer funds. The 90-day reserve is what we used to call the interest reserve fund. And it's money that's set aside by policy. And having reserves like this makes it easier for us to borrow money, which we'll get into in the next agenda item. And finally, we want to be able to fund the water and wastewater CIP budgets. Now, some of the challenges, as I mentioned, the rate study addressed some concerns about the operating budgets, and the first 3 years of that rate study are supposed to eliminate those issues, reversing the structural deficit in the water fund and creating positive fund balance in the sewer fund. Now, some of the challenges we are facing: inflationary pressures, and now tariff charges. This is our first invoice that we paid today, that we're paying a 10% tariff charge on polymers for our treatment plants. So this is a reality now. So unfortunately, when we look at the rate study, obviously tariffs were not on the table. We're looking at regulatory requirements, and those continue to increase. We've got aging infrastructure and equipment, and there's uncertainty now with state and federal grant programs. So these are kind of the challenges we've faced as we put together this budget. I know, Scott, you've had a chance to go through the budget line item by line item. So Jeff was an astute student on last Tuesday and knows it himself. But I just want to go through this budget quickly. Again, we have 3 funds.
But before you get into it, you've called me out twice on that. I got a quick question.
Yes.
On from a recent conference that I attended, I understood that a lot of districts are going to what's called target-based budgeting. Are you familiar with that? I know it's nothing to do with this year's budget and CCWD. Are you familiar with that term?
A little bit. There's also base budgeting, zero-based budgeting. There's some people just throw out the budget to begin with. I like to take a very historical look at where we are and use that along with the departments to create a budget projection. But our budgets are based on need. We go through each.
Well, I think all budgets are based on need, but no matter which way you do it. But anyway, just a question, homework for you. Next time I talk to you, it's on the GFOA website, target-based budgeting.
Yes, sir, I will.
All right, I just want to learn about it from you on what you think about it, how it would apply with CCWD.
Well,
so I can have an intelligent conversation elsewhere.
Next time at the finance committee, we can do something.
Okay, I'll be there.
Okay. When we look at the budgets, and this is kind of a misleading number, because if you look at the additional net addition to use of reserves, if you go down at the bottom, we have a preliminary water budget of net surplus of 13,000, 154,000 in hydro, but $1 million in sewer. Now, one of the things I mentioned up front, one of the goals is to eliminate the negative fund balance in the sewer operating fund. So we're on our way to doing that. And when you look at that number, that's going to eat into that negative balance. So don't be overwhelmed and say, oh my gosh, we're making $1 million. That was built into the rate study so we can get rid of the negative fund balance.
What is the percentage that $1 million represents? What percentage of the negative fund balance?
When all is said and done, we'll have about 68,000 left over in fund balance, positive 68,000.
Wow. Okay. Good deal.
100%.
Yeah. Here's the water budget. It's, we're really pretty close to last year's budget when you're looking at this. We have some increases in salaries and benefits, increases in service supplies, though we reduced capital outlay, debt service increased, and that's coming up in the next agenda item because we're securing a new loan. In the sewer operating fund, this is where you can see we have that fund balance that's going to go to a negative. We have an addition to reserves that's going to go to our negative fund balance. This is a little higher than last year's budget. The predominant reason on this is actually threefold: service and supplies, salaries and benefits, and capital outlay. But these are, when we're looking at salaries and benefits, we're really close to the bone on a lot of these numbers. And part of the reason they've gone up is health insurance costs and PERS costs have gone up. On
Yeah,
the, yes, sir.
what's the end of our operating year is
June
June
30th.
30th. When we, and we're going to be presenting the actual budget to us on June 11th.
Yes, sir.
At that time, I know we in all these graphs, we're using the adopted budget for 24-25. Could we also have a column with the actual budget at that point in time?
We can add that through May.
Yeah, okay. All right. It'd just be good. We know we've got a month left and what's left in the budget and how close we were. It would be just interesting to look at it as we go through. Because the adopted budget at this point is, was a prediction to begin with. And then number two is would be a year or 11 months old at least.
Can do.
Okay, thank you.
And then here is the budget for hydropower. Just as a reminder on hydropower, this year is when we separated out hydropower from the water and sewer budgets. So it's an entity all in itself. So what we have here is time and effort, salaries and benefits for people who work on this process, but also service and supplies costs. Those are the professional services agreements we have with consultants, legal, but also for the fees that we pay to the state and federal agencies for our dam fees and our water right fees. Now, those fees are reimbursed to us almost 100%. Our agreement with NCPA is they reimburse us 100% for those fees. Modesto Irrigation, MID, is about 90%. So when you look at this screen and you see the revenues of 1.8 million, that includes those reimbursements because we can't net out expenditures and just reduce expenditures. We have to have both revenues and expenses. But that also includes our hydro revenues from the North Fork project and New Hogan. So that's the source of the revenues for this particular fund. And as you can see, we're about to have a surplus of about 154,000. Now, one of the things we need to be able to do, and the reason why we put together this fund, is as we move forward in our relicensing effort, there may need to be an opportunity, we may need to issue some debt. And we're trying to create a historical map of how this process, how this enterprise fund and these activities are funded and how it can move forward. And it's, as I've mentioned many times in the past, it's always easier to borrow money when you have money. And so we're trying to establish that in this hydro fund.
How many employees, salaries and benefits go into the hydropower budget? Is it a combination across the board or is?
There's about 6 or 7 employees and it's a percentage of each one.
Okay.
Some as little as 5% of the time.
Thank you.
But what we do is track it on their pay start when they enter their payroll into the system. They can attach a project number to it and that'll automatically track the actual salary and benefit costs.
Thank you.
I have a question. If
Yes.
PG&E raises their rates, do they end up paying any small percentage of that in addition to their current contract on, say, the North Fork?
We have a unique agreement with NCPA when it comes to our reimbursements. It's not related to with PG&E and anything else. It is based on the Bureau of Reclamation's one of the cost indexes, and it's adjusted quarterly. So they look at that, they look at our base, let's say it goes up 0.5% per quarter, then they adjust those costs each quarter.
Thank you.
I was going to add a little more detail there. So we don't, if the operating costs for the project go up, it doesn't affect us on the Norfolk project. It does on the New Hogan project. So we have different arrangements with each of those hydro projects. So we'd have to look at each one, but the operating cost on the Norfolk project wouldn't affect us.
Here is a view of the operating budget by department, and you can see the adjustments. I blame Damon for the biggest number as part of this group. Utilities, a $931,000 increase. A lot of that is capital outlay, but still it's his fault. Now, the other one is the two culprits are non-departmental, which I'm responsible for, and debt service, which I'm responsible for. Non-departmental increase because our insurance costs have gone up significantly. We under budgeted last year, plus there's going to be increases this year in liability and property insurance. We also have higher retiree health medical costs. And within this department, we have our some of our PERS costs. PERS charges us two amounts. One is the normal cost, and that's factored into the individual department's budgets. It's a percentage of the salaries, the PERSable salaries that get charged to the district. We have three separate plans. There's the miscellaneous plan, miscellaneous tier 2, and PEPRA. Each one has their own individual multiplier. And so we factor that in. Stacy and Kelly worked through this whole process, factored it all in, and those costs are embedded within each individual department. Then what comes as the UAL, unfunded accrued liability. You're familiar with that term. I brought it up many times. Basically, I refer to it as PERS in their OOPS. What they look at is every year they do a valuation. They go back and look at what their costs were, what are projected costs moving forward, and how did they do in their investments? Did they meet their target? If they didn't meet their target, then there's more added on to that year's UAL cost. For the district, we applied the UAL in two phases. When I go through the valuations, I can see how much is associated with retirees, how much is for current employees. Right now, the entire retirees are almost as much as current employees. So the retiree portion falls within non-departmental because it's not really associated with any department. So that's another driver under non-departmental. Now, the debt service, we're increasing debt service due to two loans. One is the USDA loan that we have secured for the Arnold wastewater treatment improvements. They pay us off at the end of the project, so we have to secure interim financing. And all we're going to do is pay interest only until the loan project is complete and USDA pays us back, and USDA will pay for those interest expenses. We also have on your agenda today is a loan for water CIP projects, and that's also part of debt service. Director Robertson, we include all our debt service in non-departmental because it's not associated with any particular department. That way it's kind of pulled out and it doesn't affect or skew any particular department's costs. Years ago, we used to include it in finance, but it really wasn't appropriate to see a finance budget of $4 million when it really wasn't. Most of that was debt service. Here's the payroll budget for this coming year by department and by type. I'm not going to go into great detail here, but we do break things out. And I believe Director Thomas had some questions on payouts and CTOs, comp time payouts. Director Raderman, do you have any questions on those?
No,
Okay,
I won't be shy. I'll let you know when
that's
I
fine.
jump in. Thank you.
Okay, and in total, our salary and benefit costs for this coming year is 14 million. Now, I do have one point to make. If you go towards the bottom of that listing under non-departmental, CalPERS UAL, 512,000 of the 828,000 UAL costs for the district is related to retirees. That number will continue until all retirees are no longer with us. So even if somebody retires and PERS factors that in, it's a cost we will continue to pay. Now with PEPRA and Tier 2, that cost is going down. And that's one thing Governor Brown did that helped agencies rein in their PERS costs. Capital outlay budget.
Just one question I have on the, you use the term when those retirees are no longer with us, but if they're survived by their spouse, the payment would continue. Is that correct?
If that is a selection that's chosen at the time of retirement.
Okay.
By the employee. And once you make the selection, unless you have a life-changing event, you have that selection. I mean, you can't change it.
Okay, thanks.
But that's a very good question. Capital outlay. This is generally items that are $50,000 or $15,000 and above. What we have here is a number of items. The top item is our vehicle list. We are not getting any new vehicles for this year. Damon will be coming back to the board with Enterprise later on this year to discuss the plan moving forward. We have a CCTV trucking system replacement. This is for our ability. It's not Calaveras County's TV. It's our ability to go in and put cameras down our sewer systems to be able to view them and check out what's going on. Our current truck is pretty much had it, and it's also going to fall off the list of allowable vehicles because of new state regs. So this is not just the system itself, it's also the vehicle. We have a backhoe. We removed the skid steer from the previous one. We have line locators and a server room network. And this is for our security system that we need to upgrade. Hydrant replacements, SCADA system upgrade up in Ebbets Pass, demo the old copper water treatment plant in the raw building. We have some courtyard improvements. We want to finish off the courtyard, add some storage and some other things to make it, finalize it or finish it off. And then there's some money for the office build out. Questions?
I'm assuming that those are fairly accurate guesstimates. They could conceivably, those numbers could come in lower.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully.
Are you talking for the last two?
Well, the last
Three?
Yeah, last three. So,
Yes,
okay. We'll try, right?
we always do.
The office build outs for more offices?
It's
Here
a
in
combination.
this building?
but Yeah, it's honestly, when this building was built, it's great, but there is a need for more office space. And we've been kicking around different ideas, and we had money in it for this year. We did not get to it. And this is where we're moving it into next fiscal year. On the debt service side, as I mentioned, there's two new loans that are part of that process. And the first one is the, where'd we go? Line number 6. That's a USDA Arnold interim loan. And as you can see, it's interest only. It'll increase each year, but that's the estimate that I received based on some quotes from a local bank. The other one is the interest for the water loan, which is the new loan, item number 12. And then the principal for the new water loan, item number 22. Both of those loans were incorporated in the rate study. And it was anticipated that we would secure those in 25-26. The difference is on the sewer side, we went with USDA in the hope of maybe getting some grant money. Unfortunately, all the grant money has dried up, but we did secure a very low interest rate loan for 40 years. I believe it was 3.75 or 3.72. So it's quite good financing, and we do have the ability to pay it off. But that is, and the water loan was also for $16.5 million was also included in the rate study. Okay, I mentioned earlier about some of the challenges we have with fund balance and reserves. The structural deficit in the water fund, as of June 23, we had a little over 3 million in that fund. It's projected at the end of this year, 1.8 million. So we've been working away at pretty much our savings account for that. But now, as of the end of next year, we'll have reversed that trend. I mean, this coming 25, 26. In the sewer side, we started out with a negative fund balance of 1.7 million on June 30th. It's projected to be 984,000 at the end of this fiscal year. The minimum balance is 500,000. And then, currently don't meet our 90-day reserve levels. And I've got a slide for that to show you how that is determined. But this is it. When I mentioned the interest reserve fund, we had for many years in 108, we had to split it into water, sewer, and hydro. The first line item you see is that 90-day operating reserve. It's supposed to be 90 days of your operating budget. Doesn't include debt service, but it's the salaries, benefits, service and supplies, and capital outlay. The target for 24-25 is 4,487,000. We only have 2.7 million in there. So we're under by 1.8 million. There are a few other reserves that are down there. The special project fund, that is funded by a portion of our property tax money, and that can be used for one-time items. And we're slowly starting to build that fund back up after many years of use. Now, USDA requires us to have reserve funds for the different loans we have. We have a loan for the Ebbets Pass Reach 3A project. We need a debt service reserve, and that reserve is, we got to build up till we hit our annual debt service payments. We have a short-lived asset reserve. Basically, any assets, what they term short-lived, we have to add up 5,000 each year to every year we have the loan. Same way with the AMI, AMR project. Now for the fiscal year 25, 26, with the budget the way it is, our reserve for the 90-day will jump up to 4.8 million. So that reserve is based on the budget. The higher the budget goes, the more money you need in your reserves. And I'll show you how we're going to start addressing that.
Question, where does the reserve sit when it's at a positive level? Does it sit in like a certificate of deposit or?
We invest our money in a couple different places. One is LAIF, it's through the state, Local Agency Investment Fund. And I think they're about 3% in their returns. Just one second.
That's all right. I don't.
Yeah. And then we also have it with Chandler Investments, Asset Management, and they buy and sell securities. And we keep some at Umpqua Bank just for operating.
Okay.
And that's where these funds basically reside. Now, on the sewer side, since the budget isn't as high, the reserve requirement, 90-day reserve requirements aren't as high. And we're about $581,000 short on that one. One other thing, there is a rate stabilization reserve, about 752,000. It was split between water and sewer. That is part of our loan documents that we've had over a number of years. And again, having money set aside is great for lending institutions. They'd like to see that.
There's that peculiar tax consequence of earning more on our reserve money than it actually is costing us. That what kind of adjustment or change in operation did we use to avoid that tax? Am I saying that properly? So,
Pretty close.
okay.
That tax is called arbitrage.
Yeah.
And it's on the loan proceeds. If you take out a loan, you're not allowed to earn more money than the interest rate that you're getting charged on that loan. We took out loans in 2022 just before the market and the interest rates went up. So for a year and a half or so, we incurred a tax liability on our investments above, I think it was 2.92 on the water loan and 3.2 on the sewer loan. We're getting about 4%. So we have already set aside those funds. They're restricted. So once we have finalized those two loans, we can then work with our consultants, figure out the final tax liability, and write the IRS a check. However, maybe not quite a year ago, we learned that there is from the 1970s, there was a federal bill that excluded state and local government securities called slugs, demand deposit slugs, from arbitrage. So we have shifted our money from those two loan proceeds into an account under PFM and at US Bank, and they're monitoring, they handle that, and it is not subject to taxes. And we've been earning about 4.2%. So we get to keep all that money. Those dollars have to go towards projects, but it enhances our funds to be able to use.
But there will be some liability to the feds for the amount of interest that we earn prior to moving it to that slug use.
Slugs.
Okay.
Yes, it's about 260,000 in water and about maybe 140 in sewer. But we've already set aside those funds. They're restricted, so we're ready we can pay them when we have to.
Can you say just a little bit more, I'm trying to understand this, about what's the cost to us if we don't have the reserve? That was a USDA requirement, or and the benefit of meeting the reserve?
Certainly. For the USDA loans that we have,
Right.
we have to set aside reserves. Otherwise, we'll be in default.
Right.
With the other ones, the 90-day operating, CIP cash flow, special project funds, those are our own internal policies. It's best management practices to have adequate supplies. 90 days, something happens to us, we need to have the cash to continue to pay our bills.
Understood. Yeah.
So if I could just expand on that a little bit, Jeff, because I think it's a good point here, maybe to pause and just reflect on the fact that, you know, these are policy decisions that I want to make sure we're putting to the board, because it's I think it's an important consideration to figure out where we direct the revenue that we have to address the shortfalls. And so what Jeff and I have done here is prioritized getting the operating budgets to zero or minimum of $500,000 in the operating budgets where they need to be, which was one of our goals in the rate study, especially for the sewer fund, which has been negative. And then our next priority where we direct new revenue is meeting the reserve targets that is policy set by the board. Those 90-day reserve targets those are in our reserve policy. And so that's what we've identified as the next highest priority, where we are going to direct revenue to get those reserve targets in line. After that, what we are really looking forward to getting to is moving that money into capital reserve so that we can use those funds for infrastructure, which was really the driving force behind rate increases, was get these funds in line, and then create revenue to help fund our capital replacement projects. And we're not there in terms of, you know, the allocation of these funds necessarily yet. There are transfers into, because we do have the minimum amount that we will transfer into capital reserve for infrastructure spending. So that is incorporated in the budget here. What we're looking forward to is, once we meet these targets, being able to shift even more funds directly into capital investment where, excuse me, we know when we adopted the rate study that we didn't fully fund, we didn't include all of the projects that we know we have need for. And then we still had a gap in terms of the funding for even those projects that were included in the CIP. We have are doing everything we can to try to find other sources of funding to fund those projects. But we also need to create, through controlling costs as much as we possibly can, and then shifting any new revenue that we get into infrastructure so that we can fund those capital projects that we know are critical and we know are out there and weren't fully funded in the rate study. So I just, budgets to me are the number one expression of an agency's priorities. You can say all of the right things that you want to say in a strategic plan and other places, but really where we invest our resources is what I think is the number one indicator of our priorities. And so I wanted to just pause and talk about how we're doing, we're prioritizing making sure we have our financial house in order. And then as soon as we can start directing funds into infrastructure projects, that's where it's going to go.
The next slide actually goes into what Michael was talking about as far as stabilizing our operating fund and our reserves, and also taking a look at our commitment to the capital program. And what I mentioned earlier in this presentation, the first 3 years of the rate study were really, and Michael supported this or confirmed this, is that we have to get our operating budgets in order and our operating reserves. And then then the attention can be shifted to capital. If you look at this particular slide, you can see that on line number 2, at the end of next year, it's projected that we'll still have $1 million in our operating fund. You can see, my goodness, we went down from 1.8 to 1 million. Well, we're also going to be transferring out some of that balance into our 90-day reserve. We're starting to pay that down, about $360,000 worth. So there are movements to move forward with this process. We still have a $3.4 million commitment to our capital program through the capital R&R as a transfer in from the operating fund. It used to be, Director Robertson, prior to this rate study, back in 2013, 14, Director Raderman will be able to confirm this, is that we had a rate study that created what we called capital R&R, renovation and replacement rates. It was embedded in the rates. The money went directly into those funds, water and sewer. Now, with this new rate study, we did away with that particular rate and put all the money into a water rate and a sewer rate. And then it gives us more flexibility to be able to parse that out where we really need it. And as Michael said, the minimum commitment that we were looking at in the water fund was 3.4 million. So what we're doing is we're taking money from rate revenues, the water rate revenues, the 3.4 million, and transferring it into our capital program. And that's what that 3.4 million is. We're also using money from a CIP loan proceeds. Now, the line item number 7, that did not include the upcoming debt that we're going to issue. This is just existing debt of the 2022 loan that we still have some funds available to us. And we have some grant funds coming in as well. On the sewer side, the first line is the operating budget. You can see that we project to have a little under $69,000, going from a negative 984 to 69,000 plus is a huge movement. And that's what the target was, to get those funds taken care of. And that's where you saw that $1 million balance that used in there. And so that, yes, it gets us back on sound footing in the sewer fund. We didn't have any additional money coming in for the 90-day operating fund, but that 173 that you see on line number 4, the interest reserve, that's property tax money coming into the special project fund. Any questions on fund balances for water and sewer?
Nope. Not for me.
And then I've got one for hydro too. But this is a brand new fund that we have. Now, we did move some money over into this fund interest reserve, and that's the PG&E settlement we received a number of years ago. If there's no other questions, I can move on to the CIP budget. Okay. This CIP budget was based on the 5-year CIP program that Kevin presented to your board back in March. The only, as I mentioned previously, the only added project is the Copper Cove Water Treatment Filter Rehab Project, about $600,000 funded by the Capital R&R program. Here are a list of all the projects. Our cash flow needs for fiscal year 25-26 is just under 17.7 million. And then you can see cash flow projections out through 26, 27, 27, 28. The funding for these are capital R&R of just under 2 million, the loans of 10.6 million, and some grant money a little over 5 million. On the sewer side, cash flow for next year is about 5.9 million. Some of the money is coming from expansion funds, about 488,000. Capital R&R, capital R&R about 1.5 million. We do have some loan proceeds that'll help fund the, the Arnold Secondary Clarifier Project, and that's the USDA loan. And we also using some of the original CIP loan number 1 proceeds for the Copper Cove SAP tertiary improvements. And then some money for grants for to finish up the West Point Wilseyville consolidation project.
Yeah, I do have a question on the Copper Cove dam enlargement. That is being funded through some Army Corps money. Is that considered a grant that be in the
Similar, so it's a federal budget appropriation, but it functions the same with a 25% local match, and that is, the 75% is an outside source of funds. So it's not technically a grant, but it looks like one.
And so when we have monies in these columns, there's 1.3 million. Is that part of our 25% match?
Yes.
That we're spending our own money still.
Yeah.
And the other part of that program that we're getting funded through the Army Corps, is that the tertiary improvement, the top, the one right above the dam enlargement?
Yes.
Okay. So that, were you in the 1.036 that's being spent there, is that also part of our 25%?
That's for the SAP.
Yes, so that would also be part of our cost share. So that was a long back and forth that we had with the Army Corps about making sure that the agreements that we have in place right now, that we're eligible to spend money on purchase of that pre-treatment piece of equipment, the suspended air flotation device, and that would count towards our in-kind contribution. We finally got approval from them to do that under the existing agreements while we're still routing new agreements that are taking longer than anticipated, as with most things with the federal government these days. So they gave us that approval. We purchased the equipment. It's a long lead time item, so it'll be months before we receive it. And then our crew will install it. But that we will get in-kind credit for the purchase of that equipment.
Okay, when we start spending their 75% on those two projects, will that be seen in the grant column?
Is that where we have it? I'm sorry, I gotta.
We don't have it recognized any of their costs right now under the grant side.
Yeah, I mean, we could list it under the grant column. We could call it out separately, or we could change the title of that column. Maybe would be the most appropriate way to do it, to just say, outside sources of funding or something along those lines.
So that 13 million that's sitting with the Army Corps right now for these two projects, they don't show up in this year's budget at all.
No, those are, well, they won't, we will not get to that money quite yet.
Okay.
We would hope to have a contract award for the, but hopefully by the end, maybe by the end of this fiscal year or next fiscal year, there's a contract award. If we have that.
Yeah, it
Timeline.
won't really show up in our budget at all because they're just doing all the work, so. It won't be
Oh.
reimbursement programs, so they
Yeah.
won't be paying us back, so.
That's another good point. Yeah. So the other distinction here is normally with the way our grant funded projects work is we spend the money and the grant funding agency reimburses us. That isn't the way this program works. The Army Corps will award the construction contract and pay the contractor directly, so it won't hit our budget.
So they'll be sending out the request for proposals then themselves,
Yes.
and all that will go, okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Kevin.
Any more questions on the CIP or operating budgets?
Jeff, I just want to make sure that on your CIP budget for water, you have under Copper Cove, the CC Zone BC transmission pipeline and pump station. That is the same. Oh, I see it, yeah, number 11122. I just wanted to make sure there's a little bit difference in the description in the agenda item as compared to this budget document, but it's the same thing.
Okay.
I just see that's 10 million in the project budget. Okay,
I do believe that Jeff has cut me off because the PowerPoint presentation isn't available at this point. We're trying.
We have copies in front of us. You can continue.
Yeah, the next phase was just kind of comparing it to the rate study, where we stand in comparison to the rate study. And when I look at revenues, when we look at all funds, we're about 786,000 above the rate study. The majority of that is coming from non-operating revenues, which is increases in property tax revenues and hydro revenues and reimbursements. That was not the rate study. The consultant did not add escalators in each year for those items. And then on the operating revenues, a majority of that is the reimbursements we get from the credit card fees that are charged on usage. And those are offset by expenditures. Now, on the water side, there's a $255,000 increase on operating revenues. Again, that is mostly into higher credit card fee revenues, which is $220,000 more, or I'm sorry, $194,000 more than what was in the rate study. What happened is our rates have gone, we implemented that cost share, and our costs have gone up and the reimbursements have gone up. So that's the main driver in the operating revenue side. Now, on the non-operating revenue side, you should see a drop of 892,000. A lot of this is due to moving power revenues and reimbursements out of the water fund into the hydro fund. Because remember, we split that. And all the revenues in the hydro fund were split 73 water, 27% sewer. So you're going to see a similar decrease on the non-operating revenues in the sewer fund. Operating revenues are related to our day-to-day operations. We have water rates, we have hydrant fees, we have reimbursements for work that our crews do. Non-operating revenues are things like property tax revenues, lease revenues, and in this case, hydro revenues that are not directly associated with the day-to-day operations of providing water and sewer. And when you see that, that's where the difference, the breakout is. And that's where you see a decrease of of the hydro revenues being moved out of water fund into the hydro fund. That's the big decrease there. On the next page under sewer, our revenues are about $438,000 less than the rate study. Again, most of those, 425,000, are in the non-operating revenues, and we've already gone over that. And then the hydro, again, the hydro was not as part of the rate study. It was incorporated into water and sewer. And the revenues there are, because we moved hydro revenues out, moved revenues from water and sewer into the hydro fund, and to the tune of 982,000. And this is about 281,000 higher than the rate model because of increased revenues. We also have in non-operating revenues the reimbursements from NCPA and also MID for this FERC-related federal and state fees. Those fees have gone up. Our revenue, the fees have gone up, and thus our reimbursements have gone up as well. Thank you, Dylan. And again, the rate model did not anticipate such large increases in our fees that we have to pay, and thus it did not anticipate the increases in the revenues we received, the reimbursement revenue. Whoops. Okay. On uses of funds, our expenditures. We are about $400,000 over what the rate model said it would be. And we are all over the board in these numbers. As you can see, we're under on salaries and benefits. We're over on service and supplies, over on capital outlay, under on debt service, and transfers out to reserves. So, and the reason why that transfer out to reserve is such a large number, remember, we're keeping the sewer revenues in the operating fund to get rid of that negative balance to the tune of $1 million. So that's a little misleading when you see that number. So just understand that we're putting that towards the negative operating, the negative sewer operating fund balance to make it positive again. On the water side, salaries and benefits, lower costs there. Service and supplies are higher. Part of that is our third-party payment processing. That's who we pay through Tyler and Global for the use of our customers to use credit card payments, e-checks, and so forth. So those costs have gone up significantly. In fact, they are higher at this point. I'm sorry, I didn't have it here, but we budgeted originally $26,000 in the fees in the 23 rate study for third-party processing. We're now above $400,000 a year. So that's a significant jump in what we can have in this year's budget to the rate model. So a big part of that jump in service and supplies is those third-party fees. And that 427 is split between water and sewer.
Do you have a plan to mitigate that?
We do charge a fee, a percentage. That was done several years ago. And at the time, it was geared towards recovering maybe 80%, almost 90%. But our fees have gone up, and the fees we charge to our customers have not. We're only recovering about 58% of our costs right now. So that is something we want to take a look at as we move forward. But honestly, that is something that when we first instituted the fees, we got a lot of pushback from our customers. But it's an increased cost. I'm not sure, our third-party provider and the interchange companies raise their rates. And we just have to go along with those increases. But I think it's something we need to look at least perform a study this year. When I mean this year, 25, 26.
Could we get that as a future agenda item? I mean, definitely to take a look at that.
Yeah, I think we'll start with the finance committee on that one, and then we'll bring it back. Take a look at.
What is our policy? What is our percentage?
So the two, there's trying to remember how we broke it apart, because there's a fixed portion that is a transaction cost that's charged by Tyler, and then there's the percentage, the surcharge that the credit card companies charge.
Yeah,
There's two portions of it, and we have this, there's all sort, you'd be surprised all the regulations in terms of what you can charge and how you can recover for those things. And we had to be really cautious not to exceed what we were being charged. We can't come out ahead on that. And so we shot for 80 to 90% recovery. And I think we were successful at that in maybe the first year, but especially as that flat fee has increased, our charge has not kept up with that. So
What is the percentage that we have in our policy?
It's about 3%.
Oh,
Somewhere, I believe.
we're still coming up.
The two
I-
together.
If I remember right, we were paying $100,000, it was about $100,000 and now it's about $400,000.
Right.
And,
Right.
and we were aiming for 80 to 90% and we are at 58%. Yeah, we need to look at that.
We'll take a look. We'll bring it back to finance committee.
Yes. On the sewer side, we are under what the rate study said by about 664,000. Again, that's skewed by the amount of money coming out of the for reserves. And hydro wasn't in the project, wasn't in the rate study, but so it's hard to compare. Those were costs were embedded in the water and sewer funds. Now, early on, first slide, on the first slides, I said, these are our goals. Did we prepare a balanced budget? Yes. Did we eliminate the structural deficit in the water fund? Yes. Did we restore positive fund balance in the sewer operating fund? Yes. Are we creating a plan to meet the minimum operating reserve balance? The 500,000? Yes. And that's what Michael alluded to, that we're moving forward with this. And did we improve the 90-day operating reserve balances and prepare a plan to meet the minimum reserve? We have a plan. And finally, did we fund our CIP budgets? Yes. I think all in all, it's been a fairly successful budget process. We still have a lot of work in future years, especially when it comes to finishing, making sure all our reserve balances are where they should be, but more importantly, providing funds to meet our capital improvement program challenges.
Give the man a raise. Look at that. Hit every goal.
Michael?
Well, Jeff did a great job on this. And so I don't want to take away from that. If I were to, to be a little bit self-critical, I think the goal should be to meet our reserve targets. And are we doing that? No. We need to do better. We need to, and that's not blaming Jeff at all. It's just that, until we have met those requirements, until we've met those targets, I don't think we deserve 100%. Yeah.
You're going to have higher goals next year.
I'm a tougher grader than Jeff is.
Exactly. But he's right. I mean, we've met the operating reserve in water. We finally got a positive fund balance, operating fund balance in sewer, but we still have a ways to go to the 500,000. Now, one of the things that I'm optimistic about in meeting that is, as I mentioned earlier, that since the water fund and sewer fund had such a negative fund balance, it had to borrow money from the water fund. And we created a long-term loan program that was going to be paid off in 2036 or 37. We're paying it off next year. I accelerated the payments for this year and next year to eliminate it altogether, which next year is like 280,000, this year's 400,000. So those additional funds that could have stayed to help build it wiped off that debt, which is, to me, is very important, and it makes us stronger in the view of any banks that we're going to be lending to. So those additional revenues can go towards funding our operating reserve, getting it up to the 500,000 minimum. Now, on the 90-day, we have work to do in both water and sewer. But we're moving in that direction, and we understand it, and it's going to take an effort.
But I agree, we have a plan to meet those goals, and we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. I have one more thing to say, and then I'll be quiet. I'll just read the last part of the staff report. We request that the board, upon review and input, direct staff to submit this proposed budget and cap both operating and CIP to the board for adoption on June 11th.
Okay, I have a question on that. Our next item is talking about approving this $16.6 million loan. So when we get our final budget to adopt on June 11th, will you have made the adjustments for that, or
It's already in here.
already in here? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Well, you anticipated our approval, huh?
Yes, I did.
That was risky.
Hey, based on last week's finance committee, I figured I got the blessing of the two of you. In fact, I was even considering putting this on consent agenda.
Next time, do that.
Thank you for your patience, sir.
No problem.
Okay.
Anything else from the
No,
board?
thank you, Jeff. Good job. Appreciate the presentation. Very well explained. Thank
I
you.
would assume you were so authorized by the board.
Do we have to have a motion and process that?
Require.
No, I think
No,
direction is fine, and we'll highlight when we bring it back for adoption on the.
You all agree?
Okay, yeah.
All right.
We'll
Thank you.
we'll highlight any changes.
All righty. Is there any public comment regarding this item? Anybody? Okay, we'll move on. 5C, discussion direction regarding tax exempt bond financing of various water capital projects.
Yes. Eric, I see you there. Leslie, is Todd in the audience?
Todd had a hard stop at 1:30. So Andy Quo is joining, representing Hilltop. I don't think Danny Kim, bond counsel, is joining, but we can carry the ball.
Sounds good.
After
First off, I want to congratulate our team, although Todd's not here, Andy, Leslie, Eric, and Todd. We received approval today from Capital One on a $16.6 million loan. And it's been a challenge. There's been a lot of, some of the banks have lost their appetite for long-term 20-year loans because a number of them got burned the last time we went out in 2022 when they issued low interest rates, and then the interest rates, inflation, and the Fed raised their rates, and then they had to pay more in deposits. And when I mentioned the arbitrage earlier about the low interest rates we've had, we took advantage of that, and we did a really good job. But a number of the banks didn't do quite so well 6 to 12 months later. So finding banks that are willing to lend us money, $16.5 million over 20 years, was a lot of work. And Eric, Leslie, Andy, and Todd put in a number of hours working with the different bankers, lenders, that us, as Director Thomas likes to refer to us as the issuer, we were able to issue debt. And I'm really excited about this. Again, kudos to Leslie, to Eric, to Andy, and to Todd. Now, one of the things that we need to do as an agency is to approve the resolution that's part of this, is authorizing the general manager or designee, or even some board members to sign all the documents. And that's, I don't want to waste your time in reading through the.
If it's gonna be a board member, it's gonna have to be the new guy.
There we go.
Yeah.
Go through through this.
Yeah.
That seat down there.
There we go. But I do want to give Leslie and Eric an opportunity, especially to you, Director Robertson, to understand how we got initially all the way back in April, when we started talking about needing the funds and looking at private placement, which is like a bank loan, it's a bank loan, or a public offering, which is going out and selling bonds. And we went through that whole process to take a look at what was the best product for this district. And Eric and Leslie can go ahead and talk more about that. You want to share your screen?
I got it.
Okay, it's all yours.
Good afternoon, Board President and members of the board. Eric Scriven here. Glad to be here today. We actually started chatting. We got a phone call from Jeff in early March. So this is, and it's been up and down over the last several months, as you can imagine, just because of the volatility in the market. But we wanted to sort of reiterate some of the slides that have been presented to the Finance Committee and the board for the record. Once again, just to sort of remind on the process and the thoroughness of going through the different options and how the board and Finance Committee sort of and staff kind of grilled the finance team, trying to figure out what is the best vehicle to fund these improvements. Given the volatility and time constraints, but also trying to get the best deal. So I'm going to hand it off to Leslie Bloom. She's going to run through the presentation, some of which has been talked about before. So I think we can move through it fairly quickly. Leslie?
Sure. Thanks, Eric. Okay, so I'll start with the background and we'll move through these slides quickly. As Eric just mentioned, we've been through some of this before. So as previously discussed with the Finance Committee and the board, the district has about $52 million in CIP planned for the next 5 years. The district's rate study contemplated financing about $16.5 million of that total CIP. The district has a current construction bid for a portion of the CIP, and the financing that we're here to talk about today meets the timeline of this bid. There have been prior discussions with the board and the Finance Committee regarding various options and market conditions. And at the conclusion of the April 23rd board meeting, direction was given to move forward to solicit and secure a 20-year bank loan for about $16.6 million. And today's action is for the consideration of this loan. Subsequent to the April 23rd meeting, several banks were solicited to provide financing proposals to fund the CIP with a 20-year amortization. And the best proposal received was from Capital One Public Funding, providing a bid of 4.69%. And for a $16.6 million borrowing, this equates to payments of about $1.025 million to about $2.65 million over the 20-year term. And the reason for that amortization, where the annual payments vary, is to provide an overall aggregate debt service of the district's outstanding debt. So on these following slides, we have the debt shown graphically. Currently outstanding is the district's debt service for the 2016 and 2021 USDA loans, the 2019 CalPERS loan, and then a 2022 CIP loan. Total debt service on your outstanding loans are about $1.9 million annually. And when we turn to this next slide, this outlines the district's debt service with the proposed loans. So you can see when the new proposed debt here in the light blue lines, Those, when added to the outstanding debt, provide an equal level payment of about 2.95 million annually. And when we compare this annual debt service to the district's budgeted operating revenues in the water fund for fiscal year 25-26, this is about 2.3 times coverage, meaning net revenues are 2.3 times over annual debt service payments. Here we have listed the financing parties. The district is the issuer borrower. The municipal advisor is NHA Advisors. The Bond and Disclosure Council is Best and Krieger. Underwriter placement agent is Hilltop Securities, also on with you today. And the bank lender is Capital One. And to summarize, Eric, do you want to summarize?
No, I'll hand it back to Jeff. I think he was going to wrap it up. And if there's any questions with respect to the process or the market, as we wrap this up, Andy Quo with Hilltop Securities can speak to that. Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Leslie. Great presentation. One of the things that obviously come along with issuance of debt is the cost. That in this particular case, it's $115,000. That covers the underwriters, that covers bond counsel, that covers actually bond counsel on both sides. And it also covers the private placement, the municipal advisors, which is Eric and Leslie at NHA Advisors. So that was $115,000, which is actually a very good cost as far as it's a lower side. Kudos to Hilltop and NHA. They've been longtime partners of the district, and we have an outstanding working relationship with them. We are requesting that you approve the resolution authorizing the execution of an installment purchase contract. The installment purchase contract is basically the agreement between us and the bank. It's a loan document. And we need to have authorized signers, starting with Michael as GM and as other authorized signatories. And it's, I'm not going to read the resolution. I'll save you time.
Thank you.
But it is there for reference. And my request is if I can answer any questions that you have. Other than that, we request that you approve this resolution.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to accept the authorizing execution and delivery of the district of a water project installment purchase contract and authorizing the execution of other necessary documents and related actions.
I'll second the motion, but Jeff, I'd like to know if the 115,000 is going to be rolled into the debt obligation.
Yes, it is. In fact, if you look at the amount of the debt obligation, it's 16,650,000 or 16,615,000.
Okay, very good.
So there's no out-of-pocket cost, and
Okay.
I'm waiving my fees as well.
Yeah.
Will they get paid before the end of the 20 years? Or is the payment, this installment over 20 years as well to these guys?
That's part of the retirement plan. They earn money in future years.
Gotcha.
Okay, we have a motion.
We have a motion and second. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Would you like to pull the board?
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Robertson,
Yes.
President Davidson.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Take a break. Hey, speaking of that, we're gonna take a little 5-minute break if that works for everybody.
Cookie break.
Something. Okay, so now we're on 5D, discussion action regarding awarding construction contract for the Copperopolis transmission and booster pump station project to Mazingo Construction. Kevin. Acceptance.
It's
fine by me.
Good afternoon, directors. So I was here to talk to you about the C transmission lane and booster pump station project in Copper. So this project kind of eliminates the undersized booster pump station. The existing pump station at B tank is not adequate to meet the system demands. It operates only at 1,100 gallons per minute, well below the 1,600 gallons per minute needed to sustain the level of water in C tank. Currently, there's operational challenges to maintain the water in C tank during the highest demand times. So the booster pump station at B tank will be decommissioned once the C transmission booster pump station main is complete, resolving its long-standing capacity and pressure challenges in the system. So after this project is over, the water will flow by gravity from C tank to B tank. So this project delivers direct, efficient supply line from the water treatment plant. So currently, all water destined for the C transmission, for the C tanks must be pumped twice. First at the clear well, and then at B tank to get to C tank. So it's an inefficient setup because of water age and energy cost. The new transmission main will bypass the B tanks entirely, directly linking the Copper Cove water treatment plant to the C tank, streamlining operation and improving the performance. So the system reliability and redundancy, this project introduces a dedicated pump station at the water treatment plant with high head pumps that will permanently replace the BC zone booster pump station, eliminating the intermediate station, removing a single point of failure, so we only have a single point of failure, improving the operational reliability and the risk of system outages in the C zone. So it also supports the full build out of Copperopolis. So the new C tank booster pump station transmission main is going to be designed for 3,300 gallons per minute, supporting the B zone, C zone, and Copperopolis at full build out. So this enables the district to accommodate future growth and increase system demand without upgrades or system limitations. So long-term maintenance burden, decommissioning the BC zone booster pump station eliminates the need to maintain the aging infrastructure in the challenging hydraulic zone. The new C tank booster pump will be built with modern equipment materials that will reduce the long-term maintenance cost and streamline staffing and O&M procedures. It improves water quality by reducing the water age. So the current system double pumping configuration increases the water age, which elevates the risk of disinfection byproduct. The new transmission main will reduce water travel time, improving water quality and helping districts stay in compliance with the regulatory standards. So long-term cost and energy efficiency, the hydraulic model confirms that the 20-inch ductile iron transmission main that we're installing as part of the project will optimize the flow conditions and minimize the long-term energy use. The design reduces pumping head requirements, which will lower the energy cost over the life of the project. So this project is part of a phased multi-year effort to modernize the Copper Cove system as a whole. So we have another project that's coming after this project. It's the Lake Tollick Intertime project. So this project has to be completed before that one can go online.
All right.
So Mazingo Construction submitted a bid for $8,259,700. The staff has determined that Mazingo was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Mazingo has successfully completed similar projects of size and complexity. And this project will be financed by the private placement bond we just talked about in the last agenda item.
Well, it's a good thing we approved that, huh?
Yeah.
That's why they're in.
All right, so can we get a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move the approval of this project. I just want to clarify here, though, that on the resolution that there's been a suggested change in wording on the bottom element.
Yeah, we initially had the $9 million in there to provide a contingency, but we just kind of redid it to, have a line with the purchasing policy, so. We'll have to probably revisit the purchasing policy and kind of the percent of contingencies that we are allowed on construction projects and kind of in general. So that we can kind of be in line with, best practices, so we'll bring that probably sometime later.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any public comment? Anybody online? Okay, seeing none, poll the board, please.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Robertson,
Yes.
and President Davidson.
Yes. All right, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, 5E, discussion action regarding amendment to the professional services agreement for Dantos PBI for engineering services during construction of the Copper Sea booster pump station. This,
Okay, so this is for the engineering service during construction on the project that we just talked about. So Verdantis is, they're formerly PBI, they got bought by a larger corporation, but PBI has been the lead on the engineer through the design of this project. Continue with Verdantis during construction ensures the continuity of design, intent, faster field resolutions, and consistent quality oversight. So Verdantis is subcontract 18, which is electrical engineers, will provide construction phase services, including shop drawing review, RFIs, when they pertain to the design, change order support if we need it. They'll attend some occasional project meeting, do some site visits, SCADA and PLC integration, that'll be done by their subcontractor 18 electrical engineers. Testing commissioning, once again by 18. And then they'll provide the as-built drawings based on the red lines that we make in the field. So this, they have a not to exceed amount amendment to their design contract of $205,620. And the funding is available in the CIP 11122 as part of the capital improvement and the debt issuance that we just talked about. Service will be billed at time and materials basis. Just to clarify, this is not construction management or inspection. These tasks will be handled in-house by our engineering and inspection staff. Staff is recommending the approval of this amendment to ensure the expert engineering support through construction and uphold the project integrity.
I move for acceptance.
so motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, please call the roll. Or not the roll, but please pull the board.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Robertson,
Yes.
President Davidson.
Yes. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to customer service update. Kelly?
Jeff, if we could just hold Kelly's comments for 1 second. One thing that kind of jumped off the page to me about this, the cost of this construction is the public should know that a 20-inch gate valve these days costs $30,000 each. I don't know what it's made out of, but that seems like an awful lot of money. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Go ahead.
All right.
Good afternoon, President Davidson, directors of the board, Kelly Richards, Business Services Manager for CCWD. I am here to provide a long-awaited, I'm sure, update for customer service.
Yeah, where you been?
It's been a while. It's good to see everybody. Today's agenda was extremely bulky, so I am keeping the update today very high level. I'm taking some time to kind of restructure the presentation that I normally bring, which has quite a bit of analytics and kind of speaks to, you know, some of our daily tasks and where we are with that. So the next time I present, the structure might be a little different, but we're still taking into account kind of where we're standing operationally in customer service and meeting industry standards and just kind of tracking our productivity. So stay tuned for that. But today, where is it? There we go. So keeping it a little bit more high level, I did just want to speak to some of the things that are happening within customer service. As we're ramping up towards summer, which is our busiest time of the year with move-ins and move-outs, updates to customer accounts, questions regarding billing. You see that change in consumption as people start turning on their irrigation. We're getting ready for that. But just a couple of kind of higher level things that are happening within the division itself. We had a new customer service representative one start with us at the beginning of April. We had the position come open after another representative unfortunately didn't end up working out for us. Our new rep, even though she's brand new with us, is adapting very quickly. And we have a lot of cross training going on, a lot of information sharing going on between our customer service reps. And we're very excited to have her here. So I will bring her and introduce her during public comment at our next board meeting so you can meet her. Our customer assistance program, or CAP, renewals are going on right now. This is an annual process that we participate in where we reach out to our current CAP customers and ask them to renew their enrollment in the program for the upcoming fiscal year. I would like to report that we don't have a breakdown as of yet between how many water and wastewater customers we have participating in the program, but we did send out a total of 245 letters. And that involves people or customers who are in participating in the program either on the water side only, on the sewer side only, or both. And we have had 213 of those 245 responses coming back as eligible for carrying over into the next fiscal year. So we're still waiting. We've got a couple more days. They have up until the renewals. We can receive their responses up through the 30th of this month. And then we can open up any remaining spots to new customers.
But before you did that, Kelly, were there still openings in either one of the water wastewater programs?
Yeah, so as it stands right now, current numbers, we have 231 of 237 water customers enrolled, so spots allocated for water. We have 137 of the 175 spots for wastewater. So we had, very few still left on the water side. We still had a pretty significant number on the sewer side. But we have had an overwhelming response for renewals. And then we'll be able to open up any open positions at that point to new folks. I think we have about 5 new ones that we're just waiting on to pass this May 30th date for the renewals, and then we can bring those folks in.
And then we'll advertise to all of our customers?
Correct.
Again? Okay, good.
Then we kind of embark on, we are always sharing with folks that there's a customer assistance program. We have it on the back of the bills. A lot of times we'll put it in the messaging in the bills. We have it on our website. We very much try to share that information when callers call in and they're asking if we have any assistance program options. But we will absolutely send that out and message it out that we have availability in the program because we want to see that full.
Correct.
So that's where we are with customer assistance. We had the ability this year to send 2 representatives from admin services, so finance and customer service. We had a representative from each that was able to attend the Tyler Connect 2025 user conference. And this is really significant for us because it's the first year that we have sent anybody down to the Tyler conference representing CCWD and really working with representatives from Tyler to figure out how we can utilize our software better, speak with representatives, network, kind of do those things. And I will say that we received quite a bit of good feedback that there are options within the system that we weren't aware of, that we might be able to explore to optimize the system for us on the customer service and finance side. In conjunction with that, I've spoken a couple of times in finance committee about our upcoming customer service utility billing business process review that we're undergoing with Tyler. And that is again to work with them to make sure that the system is set up in a way that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish within customer service. So we're going to be sitting down with a subject matter expert from Tyler. We're going to be talking about some of the things that are working, some of the things that are not working, processes that we do not even have configured or built within the system to try to go back and correct and make sure that, like I said, we're utilizing Tyler the best we can. There's been some frustrations. I've shared that over the last couple of years, but this is really our opportunity, taking what was shared with us at the user conference and then using our end users here to help make the system better. So we're embarking on that starting this week. It will carry over into next week, and then we'll have a series of updates and configuration changes that we're making to the software. It will not affect customers. It's just affecting our operations and productivity and efficiency on our side. We are also taking off with the utility billing delinquencies to the county tax roll. This is our annual process where we are taking all accounts that are 60+ days past due as of January for cycle 1 and February for cycle 2. And whatever amounts are outstanding, we're reaching out to those folks, and we're working with them to provide us payment for that outstanding balance before those balances would be transferred over to the county tax roll for collection. So we are starting this process. We have a little bit higher amount this year than we're used to seeing. And so we tend to collect about 25% of the outstanding balance during this time where we're reaching out to customers. And then the remaining balance usually makes its way over to the county tax roll, property tax roll.
Excuse me, Kelly. We have a new board member that perhaps might not understand the cycle 1 versus cycle 2 billing.
Sure.
And then also the source, the teeter funds that are available to pay those delinquencies to us.
Right. So we utilize a teeter agreement with Calaveras County, where any delinquencies that we have up to a certain point, we can provide to the county to put onto the property tax roll for the upcoming fiscal year. And our agreement with the county ends up that over a period of disbursements, I believe it's 3, there's 2 main ones and then a true up, we will receive the bulk of that money back, close to 100% of that money back from the county. And the debt that we provided them then is collected through the property tax process. It has worked very well for CCWD, obviously, leading up to this point. But one of the things that we are keeping an eye on is the amounts that we are ultimately sending every year to the county. Those amounts have increased steadily year over year. And I believe that's just tied to, unfortunately, our inability to collect, the revenue from customers through a delinquency process. So next item that I'm speaking to is, one of the following items I'm speaking to is the reinstatement of our past due notices and past due fees. As the first part of that delinquency process, we're going to reinstate that and see if that kind of shakes up the customer payment activity or that we've seen, because ultimately when we use this teeter process, we want to be cognizant of how much we're actually sending to them, and make sure that we're doing our due diligence on our side to collect as much as we can through our district collection needs.
There's a line item called allowance for bad debt on some financial statements. What is the percentage of billings that go unpaid or never collectible, where you just actually have to write them off?
So I could definitely come back with that amount, but that really has to do more with any of our inactive accounts that we end up sending to a collection bureau. We utilize teeter right now as the only mechanism to really collect in full those delinquencies on active accounts. We do have a delinquency process, but that results in, discontinuation of service for non-payment, but we have not done service discontinuations or shutoffs since COVID. So really this teeter process where we get the majority of our funds back in like a guaranteed agreement with the county is our biggest mechanism for recouping those delinquent funds while the accounts are active. There is a portion of, bad debt that we have to write off after the account becomes inactive and it goes to the collection bureau. And I'd be happy to come back and report on that.
Okay, thank you.
So just kind of jumping ahead, we are going to be reinstating our past due notices and past due fees next month. This comes out of conversations and direction from Finance Committee. And so there has been quite a bit of messaging going out through the billing process where we've notified customers that this is forthcoming. And so we will continue to message that out, that this will be reinstated before July of this year. And we're hoping to see a change in customer payment behavior. And I will continue to report on that at Finance Committee. Along with a new customer service representative, we are working with our operations staff to secure some field ride-alongs and facility tours for our new customer service representatives, which I think is just really going to be important for them to build the relationship and communication with our field staff, since we work very closely with them on a daily basis, and then also help educate our customer service reps to better understand, what customers are seeing and communicating over the phone when they have an issue. So we are embarking on those ride-alongs and facility tours hopefully next month. And we'll provide that opportunity to our customer service staff. And then we are doing an annual customer service forms update. So we're trying to put together a timeline and calendarization of updates that are required for forms that are specific to customer service and customer service services. And so we're going to be updating the website and updating all of that. Many of those forms have not received an update for years. So we just want to make sure that whatever's included, the information and what's being shared with the customer matches our policy and our procedure for the service itself. And that is it. I am willing to take questions at this point, if anybody has any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah,
Good report. Nice to see you.
You could,
Thank you.
Kelly, could you shed some light on how we stand with Springbrook?
with Springbrook as a software.
Well, this, the continuing expense associated with still being tied somehow to Springbrook.
So my understanding is with Springbrook, it's not a usual contract that we would have with them if they were our primary, data source, or that if we were operating in it. It's now just kind of almost a license agreement where we have access to the system for historical or archived purposes. So it should be in a reduced capacity as far as the monetary amount that it would cost us to maintain that agreement with them to be able to see our historical data.
So do I understand that we no longer, or will soon no longer, have a server here that's dedicated to Springbrook? And
no, we still have the server. The server is ours. It's our server. And so we are able to maintain that here. It actually was renewed. The Springbrook server was renewed. I want to say shortly after I came on board in January of 2022. So the server life for that, the lifespan of that server should be around for a while, but it's for us to be able to have access to that historical data within the system on the finance side. We can even still access it for the UB side as well. But I think as we move forward, obviously in time, once that historical data maybe is no longer relevant or needed, I'm sure that licensing cost or that accessibility cost will drop off.
okay, well, speaking only for me, but I was under the impression when the board was asked to approve the switching over to Tyler, that one of the beneficial outcomes is we would no longer have to pay fees to Springbrook, and that as you mentioned, that has been a long time. So I think that the board would like to get an update on what the current costs are and how soon we might be able to see those eliminated.
All right, is there any public comment? Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks a bunch, Kelly.
General manager report?
Okay, thank you, Kelly. That was really good. Speaking of introductions, we will do a quick new staff person introduction here today. So we have a new senior civil engineer, Alex Brown is in the building here just this week. Comes with a lot of construction experience and also FERC compliance experience. And so we're looking forward to taking advantage of all of that. So welcome, Alex. You want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Good afternoon, board. Alex Brown, I'm senior civil engineer. Have a degree in civil engineering, a degree in geotechnical engineering. I've been doing this for about 20 years. I've worked with FERC, DSOD in regulatory settings, and then I've also worked for the Army Corps of Engineers and small utilities and cities. Ready to be here, glad to be here.
All right, well, welcome. Welcome. Thank you. That concludes your report?
Almost. Since Kelly was so efficient today, as she mentioned at the outset, I thought I would drone on here for quite a while. I do want to give a quick update, and maybe we might do a more extended agenda item on this before too long. We'll see how things evolve. But in terms of the golden mussel invasion, we've been working really closely with NCPA and the Forest Service to develop a response to the new threat posed by golden mussels, which are more invasive, more robust, a little bit scarier than the zebra and quagga mussels. And they are spreading in California. So we're concerned about our reservoirs and our infrastructure. We've opted so far to go with a self-certification program. The risk in our reservoirs based on the water quality sampling that we've done is fairly low, although there isn't really clear guidance from the regulatory agencies yet. So we are encouraging everybody involved to take a cautious approach for now. But the decision at this point is not to close off any of the reservoirs to motorized boat access, but to put up a bunch of signage that Kelly G's been working really closely with NCPA and the Forest Service on. So signs are up currently. There's more coming that will be more permanent signage and a self-certification program at Spicer, actually at all the rest, Spicer, Union, Utica, Alpine, and White Pines, where folks will be asked to fill out a form certifying that their boat's clean, it was drained and dry before they brought it to that body of water, and they'll be asked to certify that before they launch, put a portion of it in their dash and another portion in a lockbox that will have each of those locations. So we're not.
Sounds reasonable.
We don't have the staffing to do a quarantine program. We didn't think the risk level was high enough to close it off to boating, but we do want to really ramp up education, and this we think is a good way to do that. And as we know, the vast majority of people are responsible and will comply with that. But we're also going to develop a monitoring plan to evaluate how successful this is and continue to evaluate the emergence of the golden mussel in California, because what we know from past experience as it has spread into other continents and other countries, it doesn't always behave the same when it moves. And so it may become something different in California than it is in Asia or is in South America. So keep an eye on that development and see if we need to change our program. So we'll keep you posted. A lot of other work in speaking of those reservoirs. really working closely with our relicensing team at HDR, coming to the end of that initial short-term contract that we had with them. So I would expect us to report back to the board on that probably later in June and develop the plan going forward, longer-term plan going forward. But a lot of work right now going into relicensing. And then also related to that is the water rights licensing, not to be confused with FERC relicensing, State Water Resources Control Board licensing of our water rights, going from permitted rights to licensed rights. It's a big step. It's a significant work effort. We've been working closely with our hydrologist, Jeff Meyer, not our financial Jeff Meyer, to prepare all the information that we need. We've submitted that to the water board. The water board has prepared a notice, and that will initiate, probably launched sometime in June. So we'll have a board report on this item at the first board meeting in June. The water board notice is scheduled to go out shortly after that. That opens a public comment period. We expect to receive some comments, and then we'll go from there through environmental review and licensing of those water rights. But critically important part of maintaining the value of the North Fork project is maintaining those water rights. Finance committee last week with new members, and so I think we'll be working with President Davidson to kind of reestablish after the board member shuffle is complete, reestablish our committee appointments and appoint permanent members or permanent for the rest of this year, members to the finance committee. Along those lines, we'll have our special board meeting on this Friday, the 30th, for the board to interview candidates and consider making an appointment to replace Director Cicada, who has resigned from the board. Last week, CAMRA met, and for new folks, CAMRA is the Calaveras Amador McCallamy River Association. So it is water agencies and the counties from Amador and Calaveras that formed a JPA to meet and discuss items relevant to the McCallamy River, our shared issues on the McCallamy River. A big part of the discussion there for quite some time now has been defining the purpose of CAMRA and kind of reevaluating whether we still need a joint powers authority for CAMRA or some other form that it should take. And that discussion would continue at this last meeting and will continue going into the next meeting. The direction from the board was for members to work together to draft. I don't know if we're necessarily going to go so far as to draft a revised joint powers agreement, but come back to the CAMRA board with a description of kind of a pared down, what is the most streamlined version of a joint powers authority that we could develop so that we keep it, but we don't risk any compliance issues. So we'll bring that back to the CAMRA board that will probably meet in another 3 or 4 months. Aqua Conference, since our last board meeting, was great. Several staff members, Damon, Kelly, Andrew were there, and several of our directors will probably report out on this as well. I was on a panel discussing our Calaveras River watershed planning effort, along with 2 of the other watersheds that were selected by DWR to be in that pilot project. That was a fun discussion. But I think along, with most Aqua conferences, the panels themselves are informative and there's a lot of information. But the networking and the meetings with other agencies are just as productive. I think meetings with EID, with Stockton East, with East Bay Mud, all really productive discussions with those agencies where we're learning from each other and and moving things forward. So overall, really productive couple of days at Aqua. I mentioned relicensing already. I think I'll just one more note on that front. Sorry to circle back here. But one of the people I met with and talked to at Aqua was the independent consultant who just completed our Part 12 inspection for Spicer, the dam at Spicer. Part 12 is the periodic inspection where FERC requires the dam owner to hire an independent consultant that has to be highly qualified and meet FERC standards to come in and do an independent analysis of the dam. And then we have workshops that Juan participated in a lot of those, where essentially a bunch of engineers sit around and try to figure out ways to break the dam. How could this dam possibly fail? And then what are ways that we, what are things that we can do to mitigate that and protect the dam? And so met with the independent consultant there at Aqua, and his comment was something along the lines of Spicer is one of the best dams he's seen. It's in very good shape. And so the Part 12 report was just completed and is reflective of that. So good news on that front.
Michael, what was that gentleman's name?
Craig Hall.
Craig Hall.
At GEI Consultants. Couple of mutual aid requests have come in recently, and these are the mutual aid assistance agreements are still relatively new. I think we did our first one with TUD 3 or 4 years ago. And then since then, we've used that as the template to adopt mutual assistance agreements with other neighboring agencies. They've been lightly used, but they're I think fulfilling their purpose, that when they are needed, they're important. Utica Water and Power Authority had a need arise last month, repairing a drain valve on the penstock for the Angels powerhouse. Our crew was able to bring it back on and provide some really critical equipment and expertise to that work effort that's covered under that mutual assistance agreement. And TUD has recently reached out, and we're not sure yet. They were kind of giving us a heads up. They might need some help on a project that's coming up that I hope we'll be able to support and respond to. So those agreements are, I think, working the way that they were intended, so that we have all the liability issues and the cost recovery issues, all that stuff is worked out in advance, and we have a process for those requests to go through. And so I just wanted to report back to the board on that I think those continue to be successful. I mentioned the special meeting later this week already. We have legal affairs coming up. The disappointing news that we'll talk with more detail about at that meeting is that not only was our request for an additional 3.1 million in funding for the Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant not included in the Army Corps' work plan for this fiscal year, there were no construction funds for any project in California included in the Army Corps' work plan for this fiscal year, which is unprecedented and reflective, I think, of changes at the federal level in terms of funding priorities. So working with Mia to kind of reconsider our strategy on that front, and we'll have a discussion of that at the next Legal Affairs Committee meeting. We're not giving up. We just need, I think, to prioritize securing those budget appropriations rather than rely on Army Corps work plan, which we already have. We already knew this was a possibility. We already have those appropriations requests in, but I think that's really the only way we're going to see additional Army Corps funding. So I think that's all I have.
How many candidates can we expect on Friday's meeting to be interviewed?
We just sent the agenda packet out today. There are 5.
One of these.
Yeah, there are 5 candidates, so it should be a very good discussion.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Okay, we will move on to board reports. Director Thomas, do you have anything to report?
Well, I just also want to mention that I attended the Aqua Conference in Monterey. A lot of valuable information there in the various breakout sessions. Seemingly, there's a lot of attention given to the 218 process, the do's and don'ts of that renewing your rate structures. Almost every agency there was filling the room, trying to learn how to do it properly and to have it not be challenged. It's good information. I like that. But all in all, it's always a good thing to go and meet with people from different agencies. Enjoyed the opportunity to meet again with the HDR folks. They're I think doing a good job for us. So that's all I have to say.
All right. Director Robinson? Robinson, you have anything to report? Do you have anything to report, sir?
Yeah, I also went to the Aqua Conference, a lot of very good sessions, very fruitful. And they continue to do a whole lot for us. Last week, Mountain County's Ledge Day was in Sacramento on May 21st. Very successful. We met with, we did it different instead of marching around, going from, office to office or separating. We had 18 of us, and in past years, I say past years, and one previous year that we've had a Ledge Day at Mountain Counties, we did broke it up into groups, and then each of us marched around a gate and handed out our literature and talked about our, and one of the big things we talk about is 60% of the water from California comes from those 13 counties that make up Mountain Counties. And that's an eye opener for legislators in the Bay Area as well as in Southern California. And those are the ones we're trying to get the message to. This year, we rented a room across the street from the swing building, and they all came to us. It's just a short crosswalk. They walk out their door, walk across the building, come up to the second floor, and we had them all lined up every half hour. We'd have a total of 13 legislators and staff came and visited us, and we were able to deliver our message to them. They gave us a great feedback that this is a good way of doing it instead of crowding into their office. And we did hear from one legislator that it's every 12 minutes they got someone new coming in the door, and they're meeting with people. It's good to get out, have a snack with us, and it worked out really well. We had a lunch meeting as well and a lunch speaker. And we'll do it the same way next year as well. Kelly was a part of that. Also, it was good to see him there and active. I'm as a part of the JPIA Executive Committee. I'm on another committee for. We own a captive insurance company. Captives aren't legal in California. There's not a space for captive insurance companies. So ours is set up in Utah. We have to have a board member in Utah, so we hired an attorney there. I'm on that board for the next 2 years as a member of the executive committee, and we'll be going to, we have a meeting at 8 a.m. on June 4th in Utah. That's the following week. The week after that, Mountain Counties has its reception at Black Oak Casino, and I'm hoping a lot of people in this room and the staff and the board can make it over there. It's a nice reception. It's going to be at Black Oak Casino on June 12th, Thursday, June 12th. We're having a round table, a different format. We usually just have a reception, kind of a meet and greet. This is going to be a round table, and the participating organizations are going to be Yosemite Stanislaus Solutions, Tuolumne Stanislaus Integrated Regional Water Management Authority, Tuolumne County Resource Conservation District, Tuolumne Utilities District, the Tuolumne Band of Miwok Indians, Twain Harte Community Service District, Sierra Pacific Industries, Tuolumne Fire Safety Council, Firewise USA, Columbia College, CAL FIRE California, California Natural Resources Agency, U.S. Forest Service, Tuolumne County, EN2 Resources, Inc., Tuolumne River Trust, Tuolumne County Alliance for Resources and Environment. Going to be a very informational program, and invite everybody to come with a reception to follow. And then we have our meeting in the Mountain Counties meeting the following morning at 9 a.m. on June 13th. That's all I got.
All right. I also attended the Aqua meeting, went to a few sessions regarding the energy markets A lot of the discussion that I heard was to talk about the power needs for these data centers and the impact that's going to have, and also, you know, placing these centers, you know, how they're going to power them, and it's really pretty. There's some big stuff getting ready to happen in regards to these data centers, and you know, I don't know if it'll ever provide any opportunity for us, but it's definitely going to put the demand on California's power. Well, not just California, but that's what we're concerned about. I mean, it's going to have a huge impact on the California power grid. So hopefully they'll bring some opportunities for us. But yeah, it was a good conference. Ran into a few old staffers and general managers, and had some good visits and some good information. So I'm thankful that I went along with that. Other than that, our next board meeting is going to be Friday, May 30th. We're going to adjourn to closed session, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, government code 54956.9, Calaveras County Water District v. Valencia, California, Calaveras Superior Court, 9B. Agency negotiators, General Manager Mike Minkler and Stacy Lawler regarding negotiations of employee organization SEIU Local 1021. 9C, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation. And then, is there another one? I will add, was there a fourth,
No.
oh, okay. Yeah, was there any public comment on the GM report? Board reports? Okay, seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session. Thank you all.